Do you like my Maleficent horns? Do you know what that means? We're gonna get spooky. Hey, hello. Hi, how are you? How are you today? Welcome to Faux Pods with Lola. Welcome back. If you're coming back, it's about that time. I figured I could do a part A and a part B. I could do part 1 and part 2 of some of my paranormal experiences. Take on the whole genre, seeing as how it's that time of year. Scorpio season, which is death, decay, and sex. That's Pluto. That's the planet that rules that situation. I see a lot more roadkill on the side of the road. The veil is a little thinner. Feelings or premonitions from the other side, as they call it. First, I want to preface all of this with a talk about the 4 clairs, which any type of psychic ability or intuitive ability, the 4 clairs are the categories that you can fall under. I am a little bit of each one with a focus on one in particular. The first one I think most people are most familiar with, which is clairvoyant. Clairvoyant means you can see images of things that have transpired already, or you get a premonition of things that will happen. Clairsentience, recognizing feelings. That's the one that I'm particularly adept at. It's a psychic ability because the other person doesn't even realize that they're feeling it, but I can feel it from them. It also translates to going to places where there was a lot of traumatic things that happen, and you can feel that when you're there. So that's 2. Then we have 3, clairaudient. Audio, of course, means sound, I believe. So you can hear things that aren't there, or you can communicate with animals. That's another big one. You can hear kind of what they're saying and what they're telegraphing to you with their spirit, basically. And then there's claircognizant. That's the 4th one. And claircognizant is just a deep knowing of a situation. Say you go to a particular area and you get a deep feeling, a deep sense of, you know, what happened there, especially if there's any heightened circumstances around that area, severe emotions, extreme happiness, extreme sadness, extreme anger, things like that. You just know what happened there. And this is just a generalization. This is just a broad stroke, kind of just to get you familiar with that type of ability. And it is an ability. Some people are born with an innate ability with those things. Some people feel like they want to hone their skills and kind of work on it. I'm somewhere in between. Since I was little, had the ability, I feel it all. I take it as my own. I've learned in recent years how to not do that, how to be an objective observer and use my abilities to feel things and to intuit things to my advantage, rather than just be swirling around in everybody's emotions and kind of get spit out and think that it's all about you and what you're feeling, and it's really not, unless it's your own feelings. And you have to decipher the 2. So it's kind of tricky. I can feel when there's positive energy. I can feel when there's negative energy. I guess I should preface all of it with, I was raised Catholic. Anything that is evil or bad or wrong or negative is viewed as you have power over it. Within the lore, considering where the evil came from, it came from the positive. So according to the story, the evilest of the evil was a fallen angel. Is a fallen angel. Within that, I was raised with the knowledge and with the belief that if you don't give power to it, it has no power. So I think I was predisposed to be able to handle like the impressions and the things that I was getting, because society is kind of like our baseline, and society's view on that is that it's either evil or it's non-existent. Like either you're making it up in your head, or it is a deep, dark thing that is to be feared. I think a lot of people shut down their abilities because it's scary. I was certainly one of those when I was younger. I have always been able to feel a presence. If there's a presence nearby, I can see through kind of like my third eye, or I can see through their eyes, sort of a thing, which sounds super creepy. You can tell when I'm being observed. So because of the kind of training I had when I was younger, I don't give audience to it. I think I have had kind of a minimal backlash to the experiences I had, because I know when to shut it down. If I feel it kind of creeping up and I get those first little inklings, sometimes I get goosebumps, sometimes it's a little like tug on the back of my consciousness, and then I start being more and more aware of it. So if I catch it in the early stages and just sage, clear the energy, whatever, like that really helps. It helps to clear the space and be like, no, this is my space. You don't need to be here. It's okay. You know, please move on or whatever. But sometimes I just let it sit there. I've learned how to differentiate between mean or evil type of things, or, you know, just something that's lost and just wants to know what's happening. For those of you who don't know, the movie The Shining, based on a novel by Stephen King, The Shining, the title, refers to if you have a psychic ability, you shine to the other realms. You give off a glow or a shine so that they're attracted to you. Other entities are attracted to you. If you have those abilities and you use them, and then there's like a crop of a crop of things being like, oh, what is this? I'm supposed to follow the light. Are you the light? You know, so it makes sense that if you have command of your energy and command of your situation, it won't ever be super scary necessarily. Having said that, it's all down to your intention, just like anything else. So if your intention is to make contact with something and to get the shit scared out of you and to kind of get like pumped up and just really like, really feel it, that's a potentially volatile situation. If you have no like real understanding or like respect for things of that nature, things can attach to your energy field. Situations can develop really rapidly without you really recognizing it. And then before you know it, veered off into the weeds because your energy is being siphoned and your other faculties start suffering for it. That sounds scary, and it can be, you know, like it can be if you don't know what it is, if you can't recognize it. So definitely do research. There's plenty of local people, a tarot card reader, someone that gives astrological chart. Generally, those people are intuitive people and they can give you some pointers. If you feel like you have abilities that you've never really addressed that you would like to hone your abilities, I would start there. Just send them an email and say, hey, you know, there might be a fee involved, but it's worth it in my opinion. I did it on my own. I focused on the things that I wanted to make sense of. That's to preface all of the rest of the stories. Like I said, this is going to be a two-parter. I will just kind of let you know on some of the experiences that I've had. However the situation was, I knew that I could ignore it and walk away from it and switch the channel kind of a thing and be okay. There was a few times when I did not recognize that and things kind of snowballed, and it was, again, I just set an intention to be free and clear of that. There's several different like energy cleansing things that I do on a regular basis now. So very interesting stuff, and I highly recommend doing research and finding out more about it. Being clairsentient, being able to really feel things, I had to learn how to not close it off because that's detrimental as well. Manage it and be able to like hold it to the side for a second and all those types of energy saving things. There are definitely positive things that you can use your gifts for. So it's not just spookiness for spookiness' sake. I say spookiness, I don't feel that way. It's just kind of how it's viewed. In the same way that I'm, you know, making these videos and kind of spreading a message to people who can use them or who can benefit from them. If I didn't have my intuitive stuff going on, I don't know as I would know what I know so deeply and be able to articulate it and be able to pass it on. It does benefit. I know there's a huge faction of people that within the religion umbrella that feel like anything like that is negative and bad and evil. Fair enough if that's how you feel, but within that, there will always be a potential for really harmful, evil things to happen to you because you put so much power in evil, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah, there are negative things that you really don't want to mess with, but at the same time, there are some really positive things that it's a double-edged sword. Like you can't have the positive over here without having the negative over here. That's just how our universe is. We're inclusion based, light and dark, happy and sad, you know, to and fro. Like we have to have a balance. We have to have both sides. So if you acknowledge that things are kind of go down into a valley that maybe you don't want to go there, that's fine. But to be scared to be in that valley, that means that valley has power over you and you'll fall into the valley at some point, if that makes sense. Just recognize what it is and be okay with it and kind of make peace with it. So say you want to just jump on a Ouija board or try to contact things that are around, that are in the ether, don't know what you're saying hello to. Things can swoop in that pretend to be nice and then they're not so nice. And the only way that you can safeguard against that is, like I said, you have to set an intention and you have to make sure that you follow your intuition. Your intuition is guidance system. It's fight or flight. give you a little like tap on the shoulder and be like, I don't think you should do that. If you get that tap on your shoulder when you're trying to contact something or do something, you got to listen to it. You can't ignore it. If you ignore it, that's when things can potentially snowball. There's a lot of interest around contacting a loved one that has transitioned or passed away or died, whatever term you're comfortable with. I use transition because energy doesn't disappear. It just changes form. So I feel like saying that something is dead is not true. That's not an actual thing. They are dead in our life experience, meaning they are not in a physical form anymore, but they are still very much around you. They're still very much a part of your life if you choose to acknowledge them. Several people close to me that have transitioned that I still have a little hello from every once in a while. I acknowledge it and I say, hi, how are you? I miss you, love you. And then I move on, and that keeps that relationship strong. If I were to freak out and be like, oh my God, whoa, in my opinion, that type of reaction cheapens the kind of bond that you had, because if you love someone in life, then in death, it's the same thing. They just aren't around physically. That doesn't mean that they just disappeared and are gone forever. It just means between them and themselves, it was time for them to move on. And that's a sacred thing. That's a none of your business kind of a thing. I know that in the event of murder, suicide, things that are so abrupt and potentially violent or very shocking and very scary to the living people around that person, you can feel like it is something horrible and tragic. Your human perspective on that prevents you from making peace with what their choice was. And then in events, the whole situation is sad, and the only memories that you really take with them are in that base. Hulu actually has a really amazing show called 9 Perfect Strangers, and it's about making peace with transitioned loved ones and the means of which a particular group of people choose to employ to do that. It's a wonderful show, very healing show. Retrograde never takes you somewhere that you don't need to go, so I definitely saw that at the right time. But anyway, so that's just kind of a side note. I just wanted to give that kind of disclaimer because I think death is such a scary thing to people because they don't understand what it is. Even the people who have had near-death experiences and come back and given their experience, people still don't believe that because they didn't see it themselves. So short of all of us having a near-death experience and coming back from it, we won't ever fully trust what other people say. But I just would say start cultivating your own relationship with death. That's the only certain thing in life. Someday we will all kick the bucket. That's a very personal, sacred connection between you and your higher self, you and your higher power. To be angry at someone for that choice or that connection that they have with themselves negates all the positives that they were in your life. If you're looking to have a connection with a transitioned person, you don't have to go all out and have a seance and have, like the whole shebang. You can't do that. Just saying, I miss you and I love you, asking for a sign from them, something like that, you'll receive it. That is the part of spirituality that I think people forget as part of spirituality, is that seeing those kinds of connections, which we all have one way or the other, those types of things aren't an accident. The more you consider it something that you can hone yourself, like a skill that you can hone yourself, the more it's like a fun hobby that you can explore. If you view it in a healthy way and it's not like a scary, sinister thing, because it doesn't have to be. And if you have scary, sinister feelings, that's not the thing that you need to be contacting. The other kind of side note, and then I'll get into a couple of my stories, what you feel about the situation is how it will turn out to be. So if you are scared, if it makes you uncomfortable, that will be the basis of your experience. If you are scared and you keep being more scared and more scared and more scared, whatever the entity is that you are interacting with will have more power in that way. If it's a negative entity, find a way to claim your energy back and say, this is my physical space. No one's allowed without my permission. And I usually go like that and just kind of flick the energy off of me. It just depends. You kind of have to play around with it, and like some things work for some people, some things don't work for other people. Start working with that before you start diving into contacting things or being, certain places or, like haunted places or whatever. You'll have a more positive experience. So, thank you for sitting there through that whole disclaimer. The first kind of little happenstance of mine, we used to have a fishing lodge in the mountains. When I was by myself, which wasn't often, you kind of had to have the buddy system. And I was young enough when we were there to really need a buddy. There was this little pond that you could go catch frogs at, and I really liked catching the frogs. I would always give them back because I kept a jar of them one time and I didn't poke holes in the top for ventilation and they all died, and I felt from that time on, I would just kind of say hi to him and like hold him for a minute and then put him back. It was far enough away from the main place where most people were that it felt like I was completely alone. Whenever I was alone in the forest, I could feel things watching me. I could feel just something observing me all the time, several things at once. In the forest, there's a lot of animals too. But animals observing me is always different. Animals observing me is, I just become aware that something is watching me and I look around and there's a cat staring at me or whatever. This is different. This was, I had thoughts about myself through them because I could see them seeing me. That didn't make much sense. My intuition picked up on their energy and I am able to read emotions. I am able to feel feelings that are around me. I started having feelings of curiosity about myself that I knew weren't coming from me. Hanging out with the frogs, playing with the frogs. I looked up into the trees and there was this huge, tall thing, really, really, really tall. And I don't know, I was little, so it might have just been like taller than it actually was, but I was little, so it looked huge. And it was just like a slight movement. Could have been Sasquatch, could have been, could have been many things, but it was watching me. Up and recognized that, put the frog down, just kind of like dropped the frog that I had, turn around and left. So since then, I didn't go by myself a lot of places. Outside of, there was a main lodge, a hunting lodge. It's another kind of side note. Old places, if you have intuitive gifts, you can feel the history, you can feel whatever's attached to that area. I would be upstairs in the playroom, it was called the playroom, and there was a bunch of old toys. It was an old structure and it's very secluded right by a lake, tons of energy there that I always felt, but I didn't know what I was feeling, and so it was just kind of scary. There was always a little boy that sat next to me, had an imaginary friend, so maybe it was him. I just could feel him more in that spot because we weren't around a city where there's other distractions energetically. Maybe it was an angel, I don't know, but I could always feel him sitting next to me. There was times when I was in rooms when I knew there was something watching me and I knew it didn't look like a human. Times that I said anything to anyone about that, they'd just shush me and be like, oh, no. Under the premise of being able to handle that stuff, you talk about it grows. If you have a strong emotion, it grows. So I think that was the safeguard, was that we just didn't talk about it. But in not talking about it, I was just constantly like, what are these things? Like, is there something wrong with me? I just did ignore it. There was a time when I had fallen asleep downstairs and I woke up and the fire had been put out and I had a blanket over me, but I could hear scurrying all around me, and I'm pretty sure that was mice, but I definitely felt someone sitting next to me as well. These could be my protectors. These could be entities that were protecting me, but to me, all I felt was something sitting next to me. I kind of freaked out and like yelled for my mom. She came downstairs and I went back upstairs where other people were, and it was a little better, but those were my like grade school years. That was very interesting. Along with that, grew up in a place where there was a lot of battles and a lot of Wild West kind of idea. Go to Fort Bridger, Fort Casper, So there was a lot of residual energy that I felt there too. So I didn't particularly like going on those field trips. I could feel the anger and the sorrow. I could feel terror of, being in battle and dying. I could feel people watching us as we toured. They have those little scenes set up and then some glass in front of it so you can't touch the really old stuff. But like, that just in itself is like old stuff. Yeah. They were talking about the scene and what, had gone on there and all that stuff. The person tried to tell me something because I could feel them close to me, and so I was trying to ignore it like I usually did. And then they tried to say something to me, and the only thing I remember is "this is," and I heard "this is," and it scared the shit out of me because I didn't know what it was. So I just kind of flinched and went like that. A classmate was standing next to me and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm totally fine." So I don't particularly like going to historical places or whatever. That's always an element. I can feel things observing. Second story, and then I'll stop for this installment, and then we'll pick back up next week. I have always had sleep buddies. I had sleep paralysis, touches of sleep paralysis when I was younger. For those of you who don't know, sleep paralysis is when, scientifically, this is how it's explained. Your subconscious is flipping over to your conscious when you're sleeping. And as you're waking up and your body isn't quite back to snuff, but your conscious brain is. So you still see things as if you were in a dream, but you can't move. What's interesting about that is the things that you do see and why you see them, and impressions that are being sent to you, I don't think are for no reason. And I don't think it's just nothing but your subconscious. I think some of them are. In my first apartment, I had a dream. There was this little girl next to ankle, kind of like little flannel nightgown. She was very sweet and very cute. And she told me that she was excited that I was there. She'd been really bored. I was like, oh, okay, you know, and I knew it was a dream. I was cognizant enough to know that it was a dream. I was sitting, but my legs were off the bed like that. And she was like, oh, here, let me help you. And she was trying to put my legs back up on the bed for some reason. And I was like, oh, no, it's okay. And I woke up and I was sitting up in the kind of sitting position with my legs off the bed. She wasn't there, but I was sitting like that. I don't normally wake up in the sitting position. So then about a week or so later, a friend of mine who also had intuitive gifts, she came over and she was facing me and I was sitting on the couch, and then there was like a stairway that went, you know, kind of up like that to the second landing. She was talking to me and we were having a conversation, and then she just kind of went like that, and I was like, hey, all right, what's going on? She was like, I can see a little girl hanging off of the chandelier right there. In my mind, I was like, oh no, like hanging, like, oh no, you know? So it kind of like startled me for a second. I was like, hanging? And she was like, no, like swinging, like, and she went like that again. And she was like, yeah, she's right there. So I turned, and of course I couldn't see anything. I didn't particularly feel anything either at that moment, but I hadn't talked to her about it. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone really. And she told me that she saw a little girl in a nightgown. Like, that's what I saw in my dream. So I don't know if that was a sleep paralysis thing or if that was just like a little contact, a little visit. She just wanted to say hi. And I was just open to it at that moment. And then in my second apartment, and this one was probably the most startling and the most scary for me. In that apartment particularly, I didn't ever feel anything observing me, but I did feel things behind me a lot. I was going to bed one night and I just laid down, and I'm a tummy sleeper, so I just kind of rolled over and I was just drifting off to sleep, and I felt an arm go across my shoulders and kind of something snuggle up next to me. It was like someone was snuggling with me. I was by myself. There was no one else in my apartment at that time, and so I popped up and was like, oh my God. I thought someone somehow had gotten in and was trying to snuggle with me. That could have been a protection thing, spirit guide. It could have been, you know, a transitioned loved one, just give me a hug. I don't know, but that's the only time I really felt something. For the most part, like I said, I can feel it coming on. I can kind of feel it from a distance, and I just disengage most times because it's hard to deal with on top of everything else that's going on sometimes, as anyone with intuitive gifts can tell you. Looking back, I'm like, wow, there were so many things that I just swept under the rug and didn't think about and didn't talk about because I was just raised thinking it was bad, you know? So it's been cool to kind of reconnect and go back and be like, actually, that was pretty cool. So I'll leave it here for today. Please tune in for the second part. I'm going to talk about my kids and some of the things that they've experienced, and also some of my extraterrestrial experiences, which I believe are the same thing. People like to make it this whole other category. Another entity on another plane of existence is, you know, potato. Thanks for listening to my interesting stories. I hope it inspires good things for you. Thanks for being here, and I'll speak to you soon, and we'll do part 2. Like, subscribe, notificationer.